You're telling the court you paid for my house? I snapped, my voice trembling somewhere between disbelief and fury. My brother stood across the courtroom aisle, adjusting his tie like he was about to accept an award. He didn't even flinch. He just smirked. That same smirk he'd been wearing since we were kids, the one that said he'd already decided how this was going to end. "I'm telling them you don't deserve it," he said, cool as ice. The judge, an older woman with reading glasses perched on the tip of her nose, raised an eyebrow. She flipped through the documents in front of her, her finger landing on a specific spot. "Counsel," she said slowly. "Page 3, line 17. My stomach dropped. The courtroom went dead silent, and for the first time in months, my brother stopped smirking. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Welcome back to Untoldrevengefiles. Today, the story you're about to hear takes place in Dayton, Ohio. My name is Brianna Holt. I'm 34 years old. And this is the story of how my own brother tried to steal my home and how a single line in his own document destroyed him. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a real estate mogul. I'm a medical billing specialist. I sit at a desk, I process claims, I reconcile accounts, and I go home. That's my life. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's mine, and I built it one paycheck at a time. Growing up in our family, there was always a clear hierarchy. My older brother, Marcus, was the golden child. Everything he did was praised, celebrated, amplified. He got the applause for showing up. I got the expectation to clean up after everyone left. He was the smart one. I was the responsible one. And if you've ever been called the responsible one in a family like mine, you know that's not a compliment. It's a job description nobody asked for. My whole life, I was the helper, the one who drove Mom to appointments, who lent money she never paid back, who babysat Marcus's kids while he went on vacations he couldn't afford. I never complained. I just kept my head down and kept saving, because I had a dream, a simple, quiet, unspectacular dream. I wanted to buy a house, my own house, a place where nobody could knock on my door and tell me I owed them something, a place where the ground beneath my feet was legally, permanently mine. It took me 11 years of overtime shifts, side gigs, skipped vacations, and a savings account I guarded like a dragon guarding gold. And finally, at 32 years old, I closed on a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood in Dayton. The price tag? $280,000. Every cent of the down payment came from my account. Every mortgage payment had my name on it. Nobody helped me. Nobody co-signed. Nobody contributed a single dollar. That house was the first time I ever felt safe. The first time I locked a door and knew that no one, not my mother, not my brother, not anyone, could yank the ground out from under me again. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't have connections or family money. But I had something they didn't expect. I kept records, and I didn't scare easy anymore. If you've ever been treated like the responsible one who gets punished for doing the right thing, hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had family try to guilt you out of something you worked for? And if you're rooting for regular people who refuse to be pushed around, click hype or like, because this story is just getting started. Now, let me tell you about the day everything exploded. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were supposed to be boring. I came home from work, kicked off my shoes, and found an envelope taped to my front door. Inside was a legal filing, a civil claim from my brother, Marcus Holt, asserting that the house at my address was partly his because he had allegedly helped with the down payment and had managed family finances that contributed to the purchase. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking by the second read. By the third, I was furious. He'd never given me a dime. Not for the house, not for anything. The only thing Marcus ever gave me was grief. But the paperwork told a different story. His story, and he'd already started spreading it. Within days, I was getting calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. My aunt called to say, "Marcus told us you won't give him his fair share." My cousin texted, "That's kind of messed up, Bree." My mother, the woman I'd driven to every doctor's appointment for 3 years, called me and said in her shaky, guilt-tripping voice, "Brianna, just do the fair thing. Sign the paperwork. Clear this up. I asked her, what paperwork? She said Marcus had prepared a simple agreement that would put everything right. She wanted me to sign it at the next family dinner. No lawyers, no fuss. Just sign and move on. I told her I wasn't signing anything without reading it first. She sighed like I was being difficult, like protecting myself was an inconvenience to the family. Then came the family meeting. It was at Mom's house. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen table with a manila folder and a pen like a salesman closing a deal. He looked up at me and said, "Stop acting like you built your life alone. You didn't." I said, "I'm not signing anything without reading it." He laughed. "You wouldn't understand it anyway." That sentence hit me like a slap. Not because it was true, but because everyone in the room heard it and nobody said a word. Not my mother, not my aunt. Nobody. I walked out, and 3 days later I was served with court papers. The days after being served were the loneliest of my life. It wasn't just the legal papers, it was the silence. The slow, deliberate erasure of me from my own family. The first betrayal came quietly. I noticed I wasn't being invited to things anymore. Sunday dinners at Mom's house, the ones I'd attended every week for years, happened without me. I found out through social media. My cousin posted a photo of everyone crowded around the dining table, laughing, plates piled high with food. The caption read, "Nothing like family." I stared at that photo for 20 minutes. Every face was there except mine. They hadn't even left an empty chair. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was strong. But at 2 in the morning, sitting alone in the house I'd fought so hard to buy, I cried until my chest hurt. Not because I missed the dinners, but because I realized they'd already chosen sides, and they hadn't even heard mine. The second betrayal was more calculated. My mother called me on a Wednesday night. Her voice was soft, trembling. The voice she used when she wanted something and didn't want to ask directly. She said, "Baby, if you loved this family, you'd settle this. Just share the house. Keep the peace. That's all Marcus wants. Share the house. Like it was a toy. Like 11 years of sacrifice could be split down the middle with a handshake and a signature." I said, "Mom, he didn't pay for anything. You know that." She paused. Then she said, "He's your brother. That should be enough." I hung up, and I didn't call her back for 2 weeks. The third betrayal was the one that nearly broke me. Marcus started talking, not just to family, to people outside the family. He told mutual acquaintances that I was committing fraud, that I'd used family money to buy the house and was now trying to cut everyone out. He told people I was unstable and bad with money. He said I was hiding assets. One afternoon at work, a coworker I barely spoke to leaned over the partition and said, "Hey, Brianna, are you in legal trouble? Someone told my husband you're being sued for fraud." My face went hot. My ears started ringing. I stammered something about it being a family misunderstanding and turned back to my screen. But inside, I was humiliated. The shame crawled up my spine and sat on my shoulders like a weight I couldn't shake. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every text, every family dinner where Marcus had smiled at me while apparently planning to take everything I had. I questioned myself. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd missed something. Maybe there was some contribution I'd forgotten. Maybe I was the crazy one. But then I pulled up my bank statements. I looked at every deposit, every withdrawal, every mortgage payment. My name, my account, my money. There was no confusion. There was only his lie. That was the night something shifted inside me. I stopped crying. I stopped calling. I stopped trying to explain myself to people who had already made up their minds. I made a decision. If I was going down, I was going down telling the truth. I started organizing. I pulled every receipt I'd ever saved, every email, every text message, every bank screenshot. I built a timeline, date by date, dollar by dollar, that showed exactly who paid for what and when. I printed everything. I backed it up on a flash drive. I saved copies to the cloud. If my house burned down, the evidence would still exist. And then I found something that changed everything. What they didn't know about me What nobody in my family ever bothered to learn was that I don't throw away paperwork. Ever. Not a receipt from a gas station, not a forwarded email, not a text thread I meant to delete but didn't. I keep everything, and I organize it like my life depends on it, because apparently it did. I went back through my emails from the previous year, searching for anything Marcus had sent me. And there it was, buried in a thread from 8 months earlier. An email from Marcus with the subject line, "Quick family thing, just sign." Attached was a PDF labeled Simple Family Agreement. I'd never signed it. I'd never even opened the attachment at the time because I was busy with work and forgot about it. But now I opened it, and what I read made my blood run cold. The document was 3 pages long. The language was dense, full of legal jargon that didn't match the casual tone of his email. Buried in the fine print, on page 3, line 17, was a clause that would have assigned Marcus a 50% ownership interest in my property. He'd tried to trick me into signing away half my house through an email attachment disguised as a simple family agreement. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from fury. I kept scrolling. Below the email, I found a follow-up text he'd sent the same night. "Sign it tonight, don't overthink it." At the time, it had seemed pushy. Now, it read like a threat, like he knew the document wouldn't survive scrutiny and needed my signature before I could read it carefully. Then I found one more thing. A bank record showing that Marcus had borrowed $12,000 from our mother 3 weeks before he allegedly helped me with my down payment. He didn't have the money to contribute. He was borrowing from Mom while claiming he was giving to me. I sat back in my chair and exhaled. I had it. Everything. The emails, the texts, the bank records, the fraudulent document, the timeline, the truth. I had a plan they never saw coming, and it was sitting in a folder on my laptop, dated, backed up, and ready. I needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, someone who wouldn't flinch when family got ugly, someone who understood how these situations worked beneath the surface. I couldn't afford the big firms downtown. I couldn't afford a long, drawn-out battle. I needed someone sharp, efficient, and willing to fight smart instead of fighting expensive. That's when I found Mr. Danner. His full name was Raymond Danner. He was in his late 60s, semi-retired, with a small office above a bakery on 3rd Street. The kind of lawyer who didn't advertise on billboards, but whose name came up in whispers when people needed real help. He'd handled a property dispute for a distant relative of mine years ago, a cousin on my father's side, and I remembered my dad saying, "Danner doesn't lose because he doesn't waste time." I called his office on a Thursday morning. His secretary, who I'm pretty sure was also his wife, answered and told me he could see me that afternoon. No wait list, no intake form, just come at 2. When I walked into his office, he was sitting behind a desk covered in manila folders and yellow legal pads. He had reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Lawyer." He didn't smile when I sat down. He just said, "Tell me everything. Don't leave out the parts that embarrass you." So I did. I told him about Marcus, about the house, about the emails, about the family pressure, about the court filing, about the simple family agreement that was anything but simple. I told him about Mom crying on the phone, about the BBQ where Marcus announced my fate like a toast, about the coworker who asked if I was committing fraud. When I finished, Mr. Danner leaned back in his chair and took off his glasses. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that changed the way I saw everything. "He's not trying to prove truth, Brianna. He's trying to exhaust you. He wants you to get tired. He wants you to get scared. He wants you to sign something, anything, just to make it stop. That's the whole strategy, confusion and pressure." I felt my throat tighten. "I can't afford a long fight," I said. He nodded. "Then we don't give him one. We give him facts, cold, dated, documented facts, and we let his own paperwork do our talking." Mr. Danner reviewed everything I'd brought, the emails, the bank statements, the text messages, and most importantly, the simple family agreement. He read it twice, slowly, running his finger along every line. When he got to page 3, line 17, he looked up at me over his glasses and said, "He wrote his own trap door. Did he even read this before he sent it?" I didn't know, but I knew Marcus. He was confident. not careful. He assumed people would just do what he said. He never expected anyone, especially me, to actually read the fine print. Over the next 3 weeks, Mr. Danner and I prepared our case. He filed our response to Marcus's claim, denying every allegation and presenting a counterclaim for harassment and misrepresentation. We organized the evidence into clean, numbered exhibits, bank statements showing my income, my savings, my down payment, all from my accounts alone. Mortgage records bearing only my name. The email with the attached agreement and its metadata proving when it was sent and that it was never signed. The follow-up text, "Sign it tonight, don't overthink it." And the bank records showing Marcus borrowing money from Mom during the exact period he claimed to be giving money to me. Meanwhile, Marcus was doing what Marcus always did, performing. He posted motivational quotes on social media about justice and family loyalty. He shared articles about property disputes with captions like, "The truth always comes out." He acted like the courtroom was a stage and the verdict was already written in his favor. Family members started texting me again, not to support me, but to warn me. "Just settle, Bree. You're going to embarrass yourself. Marcus has a lawyer too, you know." I didn't respond to any of them. I just kept preparing. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my exhibits spread out in front of me, going over every page, every date, every number. I rehearsed staying calm. I rehearsed not reacting when Marcus lied. I rehearsed breathing, because I knew what was coming. I knew he'd perform. I knew he'd charm. I knew he'd try to make me look emotional and irrational. But I also knew something he didn't. I knew what was on page 3, line 17. And I knew it was going to end him. The morning of the hearing, I put on a navy blue blazer I'd bought at a thrift store, pulled my hair back, and drove to the Montgomery County Courthouse. Mr. Danner met me outside. He looked at me and said, "Don't react to him. Don't argue with him. Just let him talk. The more he talks, the deeper he digs." I nodded. My hands were steady. My heart was not. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No jury. Just the judge, the attorneys, a court reporter, and us. Marcus walked in wearing a suit that looked brand new. He had a lawyer, younger, slick, clearly expensive. Marcus sat down across the aisle from me and didn't look my way. He was already in character. His attorney went first. The narrative was rehearsed and polished. Marcus was presented as a concerned family member who had contributed financially and emotionally to his sister's home purchase. They argued there was an oral agreement and a written understanding, the family agreement, that entitled him to partial ownership. Then Marcus took the stand. He was calm, articulate, almost charming. He talked about how he'd guided me financially, how he'd loaned me money, how he'd managed family resources to help me get on my feet. He painted a picture of a generous older brother being shut out by a selfish younger sister. I watched. I breathed. I didn't react. But inside, every word felt like a knife. Then it was our turn. Mr. Danner stood slowly. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He walked to the front of the courtroom like a man who had all the time in the world, because he had all the evidence he needed. He started with the bank records. Exhibit 1. My savings account statements going back 7 years showing consistent deposits from my paycheck. Exhibit 2. The wire transfer for the down payment, $56,000, from my account and my account alone. Exhibit 3. Every single mortgage payment for the past 2 years, all drawn from my checking account. My name, my money. No cosigner, no second party, nothing. Marcus shifted in his seat. Then Mr. Danner introduced the email. Exhibit 4. The message Marcus sent me 8 months ago with the subject line, "Quick family thing, just sign." He displayed the metadata, the date, the sender, the recipient, the attachment. He asked Marcus's attorney if they disputed the authenticity of the email. They didn't. Then Mr. Danner pulled up the attachment, the simple family agreement. He handed a printed copy to the judge and asked if she would review page 3. The judge put on her reading glasses. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. She read silently for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she looked up. Page 3. she said, her voice clear and measured. Line 17. She read it aloud. This document does not transfer ownership and confers no property rights unless notarized and recorded with the county recorder's office. She paused, letting the words settle over the room like a verdict all on their own. Mr. Holt, the judge said, turning to Marcus, you submitted this document as evidence of your ownership interest, but the document itself states, in your own language, that it confers no property rights unless notarized and recorded. Was this document notarized? Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out for a second. Then he said, it was supposed to be, she was supposed to sign it and then we'd… Was it notarized? The judge repeated. No, Your Honor. Was it recorded with the county recorder? No, but then, by the plain language of the document you yourself prepared and submitted to this court, you have no ownership interest in the property. Marcus's attorney leaned over and whispered something to him. Marcus's jaw tightened. His face, which had been so composed and confident just minutes ago, was starting to crack. But Mr. Danner wasn't finished. He introduced Exhibit 5. The text message Marcus sent the same night as the email. He read it aloud. Sign it tonight. Don't overthink it. Your Honor, Mr. Danner said calmly, this text was sent at 11:47 p.m. on the same day the document was emailed. The respondent, my client, never signed. The document was never notarized. It was never recorded. And the petitioner's own words suggest urgency to obtain a signature before the document could be reviewed. This isn't evidence of an agreement. It's evidence of an attempt to deceive. Marcus stood up. She's twisting it, he shouted. That's not what happened. I helped her. I gave her money. Mr. Holt, sit down, the judge said firmly. I looked at Marcus, really looked at him, for the first time that day. His composure was gone. The charm was gone. The performance was over. What was left was a man who had been so sure of his own story that he never stopped to read the fine print of his own document. Mr. Danner introduced the final exhibit, bank records showing that Marcus had borrowed $12,000 from our mother 3 weeks before the date he claimed he gave me money for the down payment. He never had the money. He was in debt to Mom while telling everyone he was investing in my future. The judge reviewed the exhibits in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke. The petitioner has presented a claim of ownership interest based on an alleged oral agreement and a written document. The written document, by its own terms, confers no property rights. It was never signed by the respondent, never notarized, and never recorded. The petitioner has provided no independent financial evidence, no canceled checks, no wire transfers, no bank records, demonstrating any contribution to the down payment or mortgage. The oral agreement claim is uncorroborated and directly contradicted by the documentary evidence before this court. She looked at Marcus. Mr. Holt, I'm not only dismissing your claim, I'm noting for the record that the evidence presented raises serious concerns about misrepresentation to this court. I'm referring this matter for review, and I strongly advise your counsel to discuss the implications of filing frivolous claims. She turned to me. Her voice softened, just slightly. Ms. Holt, the property is yours, solely, legally, and completely yours. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just exhaled. A long, slow breath that felt like it had been trapped inside my chest for months. Mr. Danner put his hand on my shoulder and gave one small nod. Marcus left the courtroom without looking at me. His attorney followed, already talking into his phone. I sat in that wooden chair for a full minute after everyone else had filed out, just breathing, just existing in the silence. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. There was no dramatic confrontation, no tearful family reconciliation, just silence. And then, slowly, small shifts. My mother called me 2 days later. She didn't apologize, not exactly. She said, I didn't know all the details. I said, you didn't ask. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I should have asked. It wasn't enough, but it was something. A few relatives reached out, the ones who had whispered behind my back, who had warned me to settle, who had believed Marcus without question. Some sent awkward texts. Glad it worked out. Always knew you were smart. I didn't respond to most of them. I didn't owe them absolution. I owed myself peace. I changed my locks. I blocked Marcus's number and every number connected to him. I set up boundaries with my mother. We could talk, but not about Marcus, not about the house, and not about what I owed the family. She agreed, reluctantly. It was a start. The first night after the hearing, I sat in my living room with every light off except the lamp by the couch. I looked around at the walls, the floors, the ceiling, all mine. I'd bought it with my own hands, defended it with my own records, and kept it with my own voice. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody could take it away. They wanted my house. But what they were really after was control. And losing in court was the first time in their lives they couldn't rewrite my story. If someone in your family ever tried to take what you earned, money, property, or peace, then you know how violating that feels. Subscribe if you're rebuilding your life with boundaries, not guilt. And share your story in the comments. Has anyone ever dragged you into a family dispute just to pressure you into giving in? Click Hype to help this story reach others who need it. Standing up for yourself is tough. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know this story helped by clicking Hype. And tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Until next time, protect your peace, protect your paperwork, and never let anyone tell you that keeping what's yours makes you selfish.